Pauline Attenborough was 72 years old, but she looked much younger. When a soft light shone on her, she could look as young as 30. She had a lovely figure and face, and her nose was a very good shape. Only her big grey eyes made her look older. Pauline had left her husband, Ronald, many years ago. Pauline and Ronald had had 2 sons, Henry and Robert. Henry, the older son, had died when Robert was only 10. Now Robert was 32. He lived with his mother and worked as a lawyer in London. Robert Attenborough did not earn very much money, but this was not a problem. His mother was a rich woman. Pauline's niece, Sis, also lived in the house. Her father, Ronald Attenborough's brother, had died 5 years ago. Sis had no money or home of her own. She needed a place to live, so she depended on her Aunt Pauline. Sis was a big young woman, with dark hair and eyes. She was very shy. She was in love with her cousin Robert, but she had never told him this. Robert was also very shy. He had no confidence in himself. Pauline, Robert and Sis lived together quietly in a lovely house about 25 miles from London. The house was surrounded by pleasant gardens. It was the perfect house and the perfect life for Pauline. Every day, Robert went to work in London. Then, when he came home, the 3 of them, Pauline, Robert and Sis, ate dinner together. During dinner, there were always candles on the table. Pauline liked candles because the soft candlelight made her look young and beautiful. The soft light shone on the skin of her bare arms and the soft material of her dress. Pauline shone with happiness. She looked like a beautiful woman of only 32 or 33. After dinner, they had coffee in the warm drawing room. The room was full of lovely furniture. For many years, Pauline had collected furniture and beautiful, unusual pictures from many different countries. She had sold these things to museums for a lot of money. This had made her a rich woman. Pauline, Robert and Sis chatted together pleasantly. Their conversation was always simple and bright. Then at 8:30, Sis carried the tray of coffee things out of the room. Robert always stayed and continued chatting to his mother. He always listened to everything that she said. At the side of the house, there was a large courtyard. Sis had a flat just across the courtyard, above the old coach house and stables. Several years ago, a carriage and horses had been in these buildings. Now Robert kept his car in the coach house. Sis did not always go to her flat after dinner. In summer, she sometimes sat outside in the large garden. She listened to Pauline's laughter coming from the drawing room. In winter, Sis put on a thick coat and walked through the garden and down to the little bridge over the stream. She liked to hear the water running under the bridge. She would look back at the lighted windows of the drawing room, where Pauline and Robert were so happy together. Sis loved Robert. "I believe that Pauline wants Robert to marry me when she dies," she thought. "But Robert is very shy. Perhaps his mother won't die for many years. By that time, it will be too late. Robert will be just an empty man who never enjoyed his life." Sometimes Sis stayed in the dark garden until about 10 o'clock, when she saw the light go on in Pauline's bedroom. Robert usually stayed in the drawing room for another hour, then he would go to bed too. Sis, standing in the garden, wanted to go to him. She wanted to say, "Oh, Robert, this is all wrong." But she could not do this, because Aunt Pauline would hear. So she went to her own rooms. In the mornings, Robert went to London at about 9 o'clock. Pauline rested in bed. She came downstairs at lunchtime. Sometimes she did not leave her bedroom until tea time, but she always looked fresh and young. Pauline always had a rest in the afternoons. When the sun shone, she liked to lie outside and bathe in the warm sun. Behind the stables there was a second, smaller courtyard, which was surrounded by trees. The sun shone right down into this little courtyard, so it was a perfect place for sunbathing. Here, Sis put a chair for Pauline to lie on, a large umbrella and blankets. If the sun became too hot, Pauline could lie in the shade of the umbrella. One afternoon, Sis decided to sunbathe too. She found a ladder and climbed up onto the flat roof of the stables. Then she lay down on a blanket in one corner of the roof. The sun shone brightly here, and it was very hot. Sis was above Aunt Pauline, who lay in the little courtyard below. But Pauline did not know that Sis was on the roof above her. It was lovely lying in the warm sun and air. The warmth of the sun on her legs and arms made Sis feel comfortable and relaxed. Suddenly she heard a voice speaking softly, and her heart jumped with fear and shock. "No, Henry dear," said the voice. "It was not my fault that you died instead of marrying Claudia." The voice did not sound human. Where was it coming from? There must be someone on the roof. Sis lifted her head and looked around, but there was nobody on the roof with her. Suddenly she heard the soft voice again. "No, darling. I said that you would be tired of her in 6 months. I warned you, and it was true. I couldn't do anything more, and you died without ever knowing me again." The voice was silent. Sis lay on her blanket. It was a beautiful summer afternoon. Did the voice belong to a ghost? Sis hated the idea of ghosts, spirits, and magic. Then she heard a deep sigh, and the strange voice spoke again. Well, a heart must feel pain, but it wasn't my fault, dear. It is better for a heart to feel pain rather than break from sorrow. And Robert could marry poor, boring Sis tomorrow if he wanted to, but he doesn't care about her. Sis sat up quickly. She was very surprised. It was Aunt Pauline talking. It must be Aunt Pauline. Where was she? And how was Sis hearing her strange whispers? Aunt Pauline must be lying right below her, and she must be using a trick to make her voice sound strange. Aunt Pauline was trying to frighten her. Sis was still afraid, but she was now thinking more clearly. Sis lay down again. She knew the story of Henry, Robert's older brother. Henry had been in love with Claudia, a beautiful young actress, but his mother had been against Claudia and had laughed at Henry. Henry had become ill with a brain disease and died at the age of 22. "I think that I should get up now," the voice was saying. "I've had enough sun. A woman might live forever if she has enough sun, love, and good food. I truly believe a good life will make me live forever." "That is certainly Aunt Pauline's voice," Sis said to herself. "How horrible! I'm hearing Aunt Pauline's thoughts." Sis turned and looked down in front of her. She was staring at a hole in the corner of the roof. The lead gutter, the pipe for taking away the rainwater, went down into this hole. The water then came out of the rainpipe near the ground. Suddenly, a sigh and a whisper came out of the hole. Well, Pauline, get up. You've had enough sun today." Now Sis understood. Aunt Pauline was lying below her, and the rain pipe was carrying her voice up to the roof. Aunt Pauline was speaking her thoughts aloud. She did not know that the sound of her voice was going up to the roof. So Aunt Pauline was feeling guilty about Henry's death. He had died, and she thought that it was her fault. Sis believed that Pauline had loved her big, handsome son, Henry, more than she loved Robert. Henry's death had been a terrible shock for Pauline. She only loved Robert because Henry was dead. Sis put on her clothes, picked up her blanket, and carefully climbed down the ladder. As she went down, she heard her aunt calling, "All right, Sis?" The lovely lady had finished sunbathing. She was returning to the house. Sis went into the small courtyard. She picked up Pauline's blankets and the chair and put them in the house. Then she looked for the opening of the rain pipe. She found it in the corner of 2 walls of the stable building. The mouth of the rain pipe was almost hidden by the leaves of a plant on the wall. When Pauline sat in her chair and turned her face to the wall, her mouth would be near to the rain pipe. Sis had heard her aunt's voice. No ghosts, spirits, or magic had made the voice. That evening, after they had drunk their coffee, Pauline stood up. "The sun has made me so sleepy today," she said. "I shall go to bed now. You two sit and chat." When Pauline had gone to bed, Sis turned towards Robert. "Do you remember your brother Henry?" she asked him. Robert looked at her in surprise. "Yes, very well."